Let's take a moment of quiet and get in the mood, as it were. So if we can mute ourselves, that'd be great. Let's again, Boker Tov, everyone. I figured what we could do today is we can use this time together to look at the parsha that we're going to be reading tomorrow, which is Parshat Korach, because Korach, the dastardly fellow that he is a wonderful teacher for us about the nature of our ego. Because one of the things that I like to say about the Torah is a mirror, and it's a mirror of you. So when you look into the text of the Torah, what do you see? And what you see tells you a lot about yourself. And this is an example of something that we can recognize, or maybe we can, as I read you these lines, see if you can recognize yourself in Korach here. Just the background, Korach is from the tribe of Levi. So he's from the same tribe as Moses and Aaron. But he doesn't have the exalted status, of course, and he foments a rebellion against the authority of Moses and Aaron because he wants to be the leader of the Israelites. And we'll pick it up from here. Now, Korach, the son of Izhar, son of Kohat, son of Levi, betook himself along with Datan and Aviram, sons of Eliav, and On, son of Pelet, descendants of Reuven, to rise up against Moses, together with 250 Israelites, chieftains of the community, chosen in the assembly, men of repute. They combined against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You have gone too far, for all the community are holy, all of them, and the Lord is in their midst. Why then do you raise yourselves above the Lord's congregation?" When Moses heard this, he fell on his face. So we'll stop there. So of course, Korach becomes the archetype of the demagogue. He whips up the support of the Israelites and his followers by appealing to their basest instincts of wanting power and to overcome this drummed up notion of oppression from Moses that he's creating. Sound familiar? And so isn't it interesting, though, that the archetype that we see in our country right now playing out is exactly the same archetype we see in the Torah. And the practice of meditation is we see how all of these archetypes are at play in all of us. That while within you, you are also Moses and Aaron, you are also Korach. There's a part of all of us inside that, well, let's look at the Hebrew opening words. This sums it up best, and the rabbis actually talk a lot about this. Vayikach Korach, just those two words, right? That's a very powerful two words. Vayikach means he took. Korach took, right? Moses gives and Korach takes. So he is the paradigm that flows from Yetzer Hara, from the evil inclination, the part of us that is selfish, the part of us that wants to take, the part of us that will do anything for self-interest. We will manipulate. We will twist the truth around for ourselves. We will lie to ourselves. Can you find it? Can you find a time that you lied to yourself and manipulated yourself because you wanted something? You wanted something more than maybe what was best for you? I can certainly find that. And I imagine that all of us can. And I think that that's why Korach is a very powerful teacher for us in our spiritual practice. So, you know, we can look at where the rabbis go with this. And here it becomes his famous teaching from Pirkei Avot, famous teaching that I want to unpack in terms of our meditation practice. Every dispute that is for the sake of heaven will in the end endure. But one that is not for the sake of heaven will not endure. Which is the controversy that is for the sake of heaven? Such was the controversy of Hillel and Shammai, the two great rabbis of the Second Temple period. And which is the controversy that is not for the sake of heaven? Such was the controversy of Korach and all his congregation. So the Hebrew is machloket shehi l'shem shamayim, is a controversy for the sake of heaven. I want to unpack that. Whenever we use the word shamayim in our spiritual practice, I invite us to look at the word shamayim, which means what? It means heaven, right? You know, and I often teach whenever the text goes up, we go in, right? That's how we use this as an instruction in our spiritual practice. So any struggle for the sake of what is the deepest part of ourselves? It's the truth. It is the unity of all things. It is the fact that we're connected and interconnected to everything. That is what we mean by shamayim in spiritual practice. So anytime there is a struggle for the sake of moving toward that inner deepest truth, that inner sense of being unified, of having integrity, that's the right kind of struggle. And any struggle that does not go into your deepest truth, right? Then that is destruction. And most of us in our normal state of mind are living in the ego. Korach is a metaphor of the ego. Every time we say me, I, mine, that is a little piece of Korach right there, alive in us. And that's why even in our prayers, we're always trying to move toward we, us. We don't want to get stuck in the ego. We're always trying to move past self-absorption, right? So, and when we do engage in a struggle or things that don't add up or things that are stressors in our lives, that's okay. That's always going to happen. But are we going to meet that with a kind of inner inquiry? That's a machloket. That's an inner machloket l'shem shamayim. Are we going to inquire? Are we going to meet our thoughts with understanding? Are we going to meet our emotions and what's arising with non-judgmental awareness? That's a machloket l'shem shamayim going on inside ourselves. Because the ego might say, it's a terrible day. And when we're sitting and paying attention, we can watch the mind say, oh, it's a terrible day, and just go, huh, that's it, there's a thought. That's just a thought arising. Is that really true? Is it really a terrible day? Right? If we don't question it, then the ego takes, like kach korach, it takes, and we grasp onto things and it becomes our reality. And in fact, we look around and we only can see a terrible day. That's a machloket she'eino l'shem shamayim. So that's why now I'm going to try to unpack this as rapidly as I can, because this is Hasidic teachings now, which is based in Kabbalah. So I'm going to read it, but if you don't follow all of these statements in this, don't worry. You know, he's doing interior references upon interior references. So I'm just going to read it and then sort of sum up the main point. He says, this is Sfat Emet, this world is in fact called a world of separation, one where each creature looks out for itself. That is why it is all strife. He's quoting different Kabbalistic texts in these quotes. That is why it is all strife. But Israel attains peace and wholeness by means of Torah. Whoever truly serves God properly, in order that God's will be fulfilled in the world and acts only for the sake of heaven, can be jealous of no person. It is only through the entire community of Israel that God's will is fulfilled in the world. So everyone has to give his portion thoroughly over to the community. Once you do that, you see that there is no difference between you and your fellow. I'm going to read that again. Once you do that, you see there is no difference between you and your fellow. This is Aaron, who loved peace and pursued peace. This is why God chose him to be priest. Thus, scripture says, Aaron, what is he that you complain against him in Numbers? Meaning, who is Aaron that you would ever complain against him? He does not divide himself off. All his deeds are given to the community. But of Korach, it says, he took, Vaikach Korach, for himself. And even the very greatest person, when he is just for himself, what is he? So what is he saying here? In a nutshell, he's saying, our ego is what is projecting out through our mind, through our perception, a world of separation. We're seeing a world divided into this versus that. You are a completely different thing than me, and therefore you are liable to be my enemy. This is a world where we are an ego that is alone, afraid, constantly under threat. That's what the ego does. And so because it's alone in the world, it's cut itself off. It needs to keep taking from a world that it can never fully trust in order to make itself feel okay. And that's why we have this idea of the community of Israel in Judaism as a foil to the ego, that we can't do everything as one person. We need to understand that we're part of a wider collective, that we're interconnected, that you and I are not really separate. It's just an illusion that separates us. The whole beauty of Judaism is it's all about community, because it's teaching us the inner spiritual lesson that we're not really separate. I'm a part of you and you're a part of me. We're all in it together, right? And Korach, or ego, is the opposite of that. And of course, he's quoting the famous words of Hillel, right? And this will be the last text we'll do for now. Hillel also used to say, if I am not for myself, who is for me? But if I am for myself, for my own self only, what am I? And if not now, when? Right? So here he acknowledges we've got to live in the world. We got to take care of ourselves. Okay, I've got a body. The body needs to get fed. It needs to get taken care of. Okay, so I've got to do that. But if I am only for myself, what am I? Only for himself. And so are certain dear leaders in our society right now. And you see the results of that. So our meditation practice is actually conditioning our mind to be in a place where we are in a machloket l'shem shamayim, right? The mind's job is to divide things up, folks. That's what it does. It takes things and sees things as this versus that. It's constantly comparing things. It's constantly judging things. That's the mind's job. That's what it does, right? So when we're sitting, it's a funny way of looking at it, but when we're sitting in meditation, we're engaging in a kind of machloket, a kind of argument. But it's not, it's the opposite of an argument, right? It's sort of the obverse of an argument. In other words, there is an awareness which exists beyond thought, which is able to contextualize the thought and return it to the Shamayim, return it to the absolute unity, which is beyond our perception. Our minds can't grasp anything absolute. We think we can, and that's all the dangers of the world come from that. But it returns the thought back to where it came from, which is infinite love, infinite blessing, infinite oneness, infinite truth. L'shem shamayim. Right? So let's all engage in a machloket l'shem shamayim now, shall we? And we'll sit in our meditation this morning. So everybody, take your positions. And okay, let's take a nice in-breath in and release. Another deep in-breath in and release. Okay. As we breathe in, let's breathe into our bodies now. Let's begin with, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? So now let's just come into a beautiful awareness of our bodies, of ourself. As we breathe in, feel the aliveness that's being nourished by the in-breath. And as we breathe out, just be aware of the beautiful release of toxins and all that's no longer required with each breath to support this body. How each breath is being for ourselves. And yet somehow each breath connects us to the wider world. With each breath, I am breathing in for myself, breathing out, recognizing that I am part of this interconnected web of reality from which I take in nourishment, to which I give out carbon dioxide and feed the plants. I am both for myself and I am interconnected with all things. Breathing in the particles and molecules of the atmosphere around us, those that nourish us and that harm us in every breath. That too is part of the reality that we are all participating in. And as we breathe, our hearts are beating. The blood is carrying the oxygen and nutrients to every cell of our body. Think about that. The millions and millions of cells are being nourished in every moment, and they're being connected to the universe. The wonder of that, the beauty that is present with each breath. Let's just sit with that for a moment. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? This is your moment to recognize the brilliant miracle of yourself, of your present aliveness. And if I am only for myself, what am I? And this is a moment of recognizing that you are way more than this body and this self, just on the physical level. We're not even talking about the spiritual stuff here. Of course, it's all spiritual. The wonderful duality that is a non-duality, this self and other, that are really two aspects of the same miracle arising in this moment. And as we're breathing, and as seconds go by and minutes go by, it's a wonderful, miraculous thing, but notice what the mind is starting to do. Maybe it's wandering a little. Maybe there's a little restlessness. Maybe there's a little sleepiness. Whatever it is, maybe there's a distraction. There's an emotional charge somewhere which keeps distracting you. This is all part of this miraculous interconnectedness. This is not wrong. This is not a mistake. This is now our machloket l'shem shamayim. We're noticing whatever might be arising now within the body-mind of this being now that is sitting with the breath. It could be thoughts, feelings, it could be distracting sounds. Whatever it is, distracting sensations, discomforts, whatever. Let's just recognize it. Maybe we can label it thinking, feeling, sensing, or label it as restlessness or sleepiness. And then we come back to this miraculous breath which connects us to the universe until the next thing arises, whatever that is, and we label it. Come back to the breath. And as we sit, we might notice other kinds of thinking coming up for us. Thoughts about an imagined future, thoughts about a remembered past. Welcome to the ego. Is there something you're worried about? Something you're feeling guilty about? That's the ego. The ego is the storyteller who weaves a story about past and future, because the ego always feels alone and afraid in the universe and disconnected. Vaikach korach. It's that feeling of, sometimes we call it dissatisfaction with what is, or discomfort, or angst. Just notice it's the ego's job to create complex webs of past and future to try to fix its feeling of discomfort. And we can meet the ego's stories as we sit with a very silent, is that so? Is that true? Just leave it as an open-minded question mark to the solid conclusions of the egoic mind. And watch what happens to those very solid thoughts of future or past with their deep emotional charge. And then come back to that miraculous breath. Because the breath takes us to the Shamayim, to the place where all of those dramas that the ego weaves are resolved. They're resolved into joy and peace and gratitude. Shamayim is another name, believe it or not, for this present moment. If not now, when? That's the final line. When you're here in this moment, you have reached Shamayim. You're going to take another few minutes in silence now and see if you can work with some of these tools now. As we meet the ego without judgment, with just an inquiring, loving mind, and come home to the Shamayim. Yai, lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, lai, yai, lai, yai, lai, lai, lai. Yai, lai, 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 yai, lai, lai, lai. Yai, lai, 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 yai, yai, lai, lai, lai. Yai, lai, lai, yai, lai, 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 yai, lai. Yai, lai, 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 yai, lai, lai, yai, yai, lai, lai, lai. Yai, lai, lai, yai, lai, 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 yai, lai. Yai, lai, 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 yai, lai, lai. Yai, lai, 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 lai. Okay, so we have a pause moment here. So if anybody has any questions or reflections on the practice or in the teaching, love to hear anything you have to say or ask or reflect. How's that restlessness going today?
It was especially beautiful today, being out on our porch, listening
Beautiful to watch.
the birds and the just nature and just meditating, just thinking about nothing, trying to just be with the breath and have the sound of nature and us was just beautiful.
That's the best. There's a beautiful bird song there, and then that's a part of you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're not separate from that. And that's the beautiful insight of L'Shem Shamayim.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so there's always something so tempting about that korach within us, right? That wants to take from it and use it and manipulate it. And we lose so much when we don't remember that it's all us. We can just be with it. Right?
It's hard to do right now with, that's why we need these sessions. Just trying to not pay attention to what's going on out there.
That's right. That's right. Right. That's and remember, what's going on out there. When you really get still with yourself, the birds are singing. That's it. That's what's out there. Mm-hmm. Right. That's that's actually, there is no problem in this moment awareness. Right? And it's a shift of how we work with our consciousness, really. Right? Because if I say right now there's no problem in the whole world, there's a part of us going, what? What are you talking about? There's no problem in the world. What? Like you crazy? Right? That we want to go to that place, but that, believe it or not, is the egoic mind. By the way, we need our egoic mind. I'm not saying, I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not saying you have to completely obliterate it completely. The rabbis teach us that, I think I've taught this before, but I'll teach it again. They use the metaphor of kashrut, that according to halacha, if you are cooking a pot of stew, a beef stew, what happens if one drop of milk falls into that pot of beef stew? Does that trafe up the whole thing? Well, the rabbis explain, actually not necessarily, believe it or not. They explain that the rule that you should apply to it is batel bashishim, which means nullified with 1/60th. So that means that if the drop of milk is less than 1/60th of the volume of the beef stew, it's still kosher. By the way, that rule falls apart when? On Pesach. On Pesach with chometz, it's batel b'mashahu, it's called. It means nullified with nothing. Like, in other words, even the tiniest microscopic crumb can make something not kosher for Passover. But when it comes to milk and meat, you thought you're studying meditation. Now you're learning halacha. But I'll bring it back in a moment. When you're with milk and meat, it can be batel b'shishim. Now the rabbis say the same thing applies to the ego. You need a little drop of ego in order to get by in this world, right? There's that drop of ego that's necessary. I see you, Barbara. I just got to claim a second. That you need that drop of ego because you know what? There are problems in the world we have to work on. But the other rest of the stew, which is our mind, we can be at peace with what is, right? It's a beautiful teaching, actually. You see how these technical things are actually very spiritual? That's the idea. Barbara, go ahead.
So you say oh, thank you. Hi, Rabbi. You
Hi.
60th. So isn't sleep 1/60th of death? Is there a correlation between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the same metaphor, right? That there's this 1/60th becomes sort of, you know, whenever they do that, they talk, the idea is that, so what is the preponderance of awareness? Where does it need to be, right? And so with the teaching about sleep being 1/60th of death, you know, that's actually a very beautiful and reassuring concept when you're a spiritual practitioner. Because the scariest thing in the world for the ego is non-existence, right? The ego is constantly terrified of being obliterated into the void of dying, right? So, you know, what am I if I am not my thoughts of past and future? That's the ego's question. What am I going to be? I need to force and manipulate to prove that I exist, because otherwise I'm nothing. What do you mean I'm the same thing as the birds singing behind me? What is that supposed to mean? Then I'm nothing. So, you know, well, actually, you know how to be nothing. You do it all the time. Every time you go to sleep at night.
So how does it correlate to if a drop falls and it's less than 1/60th, it's still kosher? How does the concept?
Well, it's more just the idea of 1/60th, meaning it's a little drop of, right? So in other words, when you go to sleep at night, it's delicious, it's lovely. There's no ego, there's nothing. Is there a world when you're in your deep sleep? No, but you know, there's nothing to it, literally. And you wake up and you're refreshed. Right? There's nothing wrong with being nothing. We do it all the time. And so that's 1/60th. So in other words, that the idea is that it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Right? And that so don't be afraid of nothing, because nothing is not what we fear it is. That's the point. Julia.
I thought there was something how on the Pesach thing, was a squirrel or a weasel or something brings the chametz to your house. You don't have to worry about that. And that always gave me like, oh, it's not perfection. It's like, you know, they can bring their crumb in. And so I try to use that for other things too. Yes, you know, it may be there, but it's okay.
So look, you know, we can get into the whole Pesach discussion, but yes, that's balanced out. And remember, when you nullify your chametz before Passover, you are declaring anything that you can't control, because there's always going to be something you can't control. You declare it as afra da'ara, which is the Aramaic term meaning it's the dust of the earth. So there's always going to be crumbs somewhere, and you can't control it. And that is the stuff that the squirrel's going to bring into the house. Okay, that you can't control. That's the dust of the earth. But when you are in control and you have your pot of stew, Julia, don't put any chametz in there. How did we get here, man? All right, I'm going to take us back, and we're going to do one more teaching now, and then we're going to move from Pesach to Sukkot now. And hello, there we go. Masechet Sukkah. This is another, I just figured we continue with the Hillel thing. We're moving from Korach to Hillel because he's the great teacher. This is going to sound sort of familiar. You know, remember we just read, if I am not for myself, it will be for me. If I'm only for myself, that one. Watch this. It is taught in the Tosefta. They said about Hillel the elder that when he was rejoicing at the celebration of the place of the drawing of the water, that is part of the Sukkot celebration, he said this: if I am here, everyone is here. And if I am not here, who is here? That's a real brain twister, right? What is he saying there? That's a really interesting idea. If I am here, everyone is here. And if I am not here, who is here? So now the conventional interpretation of this is, this is a time of pilgrimage to the temple. And so when the conventional way of looking at it, when he says, I'm here, everyone is here. If I'm not here, he means I have to take responsibility for myself being here. And, I can't assume other people are going to show up. I have to show up. So that's the conventional. But now we're going to read it from what I think Hillel actually meant, right? Because Sukkot is a very spiritual holiday. And he's talking now about this idea of, I am here now. If I'm here in this present moment, everyone is here, right? In other words, the attention that I bring to this moment is all of the attention in the world. Remember, everything and you are interconnected. You literally are the world, to quote a song from the 80s, right? You are the whole world. I know that, and I want us to go there because this is a different level of consciousness, right? You're lavishing your attention on this bird chirping or this breath being breathed, right? Or this thought arising. That is the whole world there paying attention. It's the same thing. It's a hard time to put this into words. I hope you follow me on this, but there is not a multiplicity of millions of people here. There's only one in our mindful state of awareness. There's only one awareness arising. The ego says, it's me, it's mine, right? The ego takes it. That's the Korach, and says, this awareness, me, I am. But actually, this awareness that's arising isn't you. It's just the awareness that is behind all things. It's actually God. Right? And this is where we get it when we really work with the practice here. This awareness that notices, it's very tricky because the ego likes to think it's me who's doing this. It ain't. That's terrifying for the ego. There's that fear of death again, that batel b'shishim. If the awareness isn't actually me in the first place, then what am I? Well, actually, you never were really there. Just that awareness was there. So if I am here, everyone is here. The I is the anochi. It's the capital I versus the small egoic I. If I am not here, who is not here? If you're not paying attention, if you're lost in ego, who's here? There's just worry and fear. And there's no one there. That's actually the opposite of presence when we're in our egoic mind. Are you following me on this? This is really, really deep stuff here. Let's keep reading it. It says, he would also say this, to the place that I love, there my feet take me, and therefore I come to the temple. And the Holy One, blessed be he, says, if you come to my house, I will come to your house. If you do not come to my house, I will not come to your house. As it is stated, in every place that I cause my name to be mentioned, I will come to you and bless you. So it's really the same idea, isn't it? Because once we begin to realize that this awareness is actually the divine awareness, if your ego has if we allow the ego to open up to this divine awareness, if we come to God's house in this moment, then God comes to us. It's simply that. When we open to this awareness, that's all there is. That's all there ever was. All the rest is a story. It's batel b'shishim. right? It's the real pot of stew here is it's all God, right? And then this little teapot, this little drop of of ego. Yeah, God created us this way because we're all students. We're in a kind of earth school here to learn. But really, what's happening is we're Batal Bashishim. So there you go. A thought to a concept for us to move to use as a tool and to move past. All concepts limit us. All concepts are egoic, right? So these are just teachings that point us to what's true, right? Don't get stuck in the ideas. Don't get stuck in the language. Don't get stuck in the phraseology here. What matters is simply, if I'm here, everything is here. Let's sit with that for the next couple of minutes and then we'll close, okay? So everybody, once again, let's take a nice deep breath in and relax. Take a nice deep breath in again and release. Is there any tension in your body? Any muscles that are tense? Just do a quick awareness check. Look around your neck, your shoulders, your back, your legs, your arms. Any tensions? Your belly, your chest. The idea when we notice tensions are just reflections of stressful thoughts. So we deal with tensions in the body the way we deal with tensions in our thoughts, which is we just notice them. We don't try to make them go away. Just notice that they're there and greet them with love. They're all part of this present arising. They're part of this gift of God's world that we're a part of. Yes, even the tensions and the unpleasant things. That's why we're here to notice them in this earth school that we're in. And every time we notice, we're joining with God. Every time we come here now, we're in the house of God. So just allow yourself to sit with the breath now. Allow the awareness to notice the breathing in and the breathing out. And if I'm here, everyone is here. The whole universe now is noticing this in-breath, believe it or not. If you don't buy that, just notice your own noticing of the breath. Breathing in, breathing out. Notice all of the sounds and sensations of the world around you and within you. That is the whole universe right there. Our rabbis teach us that our job is to create the world, to make it as a home or a house of God. That's exactly what we're doing here. We're inviting God into the world by simply noticing what is. That is the same thing. The noticing is just the ego getting out of the way And then there is the awareness of what's arising, otherwise known as God, or Shamayim, or truth, or gratitude. Pick whichever works for you. What matters is simply noticing.
So let it be written. So let it be done. So let it be written. So let it be done.
Yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai. Lai, 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 yai, lai, 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 yai, lai, 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 yai, lai, 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 yai, lai, 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 yai, lai, lai. Yai, lai, 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 yai, lai, 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 lai. Thank you, everybody. Wonderful to meditate with you. Any final questions or anything before we close? Okay. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Hopefully I'll see you this evening at 6:30 and tomorrow at 9:15.